Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to day three, session two of the product creation challenge. And what I want to start with is answering any questions that you might have. If you have any questions about anything that we have covered thus far, I'm happy to try to answer your questions, and then we'll go ahead and get started. My goal is to number one, not hold you any longer than 30 minutes, 45 at the longest, if that. And then by the end of the month, that if you're following along and you're keeping pace, that you're actually going to have your product created and ready to launch by the end of the month. And so this series is really your opportunity to take advantage and maybe overcome some of the technical barriers you might have, and also to be able to overcome anything that you might think is a misconception. Now, if this is your first product, it's not designed for it to be a work of art, right? If you haven't created anything yet, you want to get done, right? So the goal is for you to finish, and we are going to take you across the finish line. So that being said, are there any questions? Any questions about anything that we have covered thus far? Anything that we have covered thus far? Do we have any questions? And if not, I'm going to go ahead and get started with tonight. And if you have any questions, you can just go ahead and write them right there into the box. Okay, and then I'm going to share my screen here. And let's see, I'm going to go and see, I probably need to do this again. Hit the screen share. Okay, can everybody see my screen? If you can see my screen, please put the number 1 in the question box, and then I'll know to kind of go ahead and get started. If you can see my screen, please put the number 1 in the question box, and we can go ahead and get started. Okay, so if you can hear me, okay, no one wants to be the guinea pig. Okay, very good. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you, of those of you who are here, how many of you have created a product that you have started but not yet finished? So if you have started something and you have been creating it and you wanted to launch it, please put the number 2 in the question box. Okay, so please put the number 2 in the question box if you have created something. Maybe you started the product, but you haven't yet finished it and you haven't yet launched it. So if that's you, please put the number 2 in the question box, and then we'll get started. All right, now, so let's kind of talk about this here. Now, up till now in the product creation challenge, here's where we are. Okay, so we have talked about the context for all the internet marketing. Now, I've covered that already, and I covered that in the 30-day challenge. So if you have the 30-day challenge, I've probably covered that probably within the first 3 or 4 videos in that challenge. So if you haven't done that, maybe you want to just go through the first 3 or 4. You don't have to go through the whole thing if you're just getting started. I also covered all of the ways there are to make money in internet marketing. So I covered that in the 30-day challenge. And again, 30-day challenge is really pretty much just a contextual kind of give you the bird's eye view, and you will have a perspective on internet marketing. I covered the tools that you need to be successful in internet marketing. Now, I know that you probably get, if you're like me, you're on a lot of mailing lists, and you probably get a solicitation about a tool every single day, and you're probably wondering, well, which ones do I need, right? Which ones can I not do without? And I covered that in the 30-day challenge. And then what skills do I need, right? What skills do I have to have if I'm going to be successful in internet marketing? I covered that in the 30-day challenge. Okay, so now what we want to do is also now in the first webinar, right? In the first webinar, I covered partnerships and collaborations. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight, but I want to encourage you, or I want to encourage you where you have other marketers that you know, right? Where you have other marketers that you know, that you really, really, really and truly start to get to know each other so that you can work together. Right, a partnership and collaboration is going to be the fastest way for you to be able to get something done and get it out there. Because typically what happens in internet marketing, we probably start out and we think, well, you know what? Nobody wants to work with me. I don't really have any skills, but typically what's going to happen is you're going to find out that you probably have the one skill that somebody needs. Right, and you won't know that until you actually start reaching out to people, and really talking to them about their internet marketing business and about yours. On a routine basis, you should be asking people, what is it they need? What do they sell? Right, and so when you start to meet other marketers, just find out what it is they sell, and then there's also the JVZoo conference, which I'm pretty sure you're getting lots of email on. If you can go, again, I covered what you can expect from the JVZoo conference in that first webinar. So if you haven't seen that first webinar, you can actually see it there. Okay, so somebody's asking for the link to the 30-day challenge. I'm going to put that in here, and then when you do that, just use the code GTP welcome, and I think it's 80% off or something like that. GTP welcome is the code. Okay, so partnerships and collaborations, and then also the if you're looking for the replays, they're on my YouTube channel at YouTube. You can find these other webinars on youtube.com/gain mindshare. So that's where the replays are. Okay, now, so I covered partnerships and collaborations in that first webinar. We also talked about the product traffic plan. So in other words, how do I create a product and get traffic at the same time? And we talked about that in that first webinar. Now, I want you to kind of get this in your head. Traffic is not going to be a problem, right? You really do need to have something first. So I don't want you to worry about traffic before you start creating your product, because typically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating your traffic while you create the product. And I talked about that in the first webinar. So if you haven't seen that, head on over to the YouTube channel and it's there. So the product traffic plan, it was the 11 P's, and I went into that in some detail. And then we also talked about on the day one webinar, the day one of the product creation challenge, we talked about finding the pain and how that was really going to be the key to your being able to create a product. Now, again, if this is your first product that you're creating, don't worry if it doesn't make a lot of sales. Get it created, get it done, go through this process. But if you want to increase the odds that people are going to buy this product and they're going to buy it and love it, you want to make sure that you find the pain that people are experiencing in your niche, right? And we talked about what that looks like. We talked about what the pain really means. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but you have to really find out what people want to have solved yesterday, right? What are people desperate to solve? What goal do they want to accomplish yesterday? I was talking to a friend of mine, and they were just talking about the fact that they had no idea, right? No idea how they were going to get their kid into school and to afford college for them. Now, you know what? I know that's a mystery, but there are products available that are out there. If somebody did a product on how to make college more affordable, right, for your 17-year-old and 18-year-old, everybody here who has a kid, it doesn't matter how many books were written, it doesn't matter how many people have done classes, it doesn't matter how much free information out there. How many of you who have a kid in college, if somebody came out with a product telling you that you could figure out how to reduce the cost of your kid going to college, you'd pay for it? I know I would. Right. So the point is, you've got to find the pain that people are having. And it doesn't have to be in internet marketing. right now. I mean, I know a lot of people want to make money yesterday, and that's a great pain point, right? You want to be able to make more money on Facebook. It's a great pain point to want to make more money with your YouTube channel. But there are more niches available than that. And if you have an area of expertise that you can speak to, well, speak to that area of expertise first, right? That's really what we talked about, finding the pain people are having and being able to design a solution that you know about or that you can research. Now, we talked about making sure that you figure out how are you going to solve the problem, right? How are you going to solve the problem? You're going to design an information product. You're going to tell them how to solve it. Are you going to give them a software solution, right? Are you going to create a service and you're going to do it for them? Doesn't really matter. You want to make sure first you find the pain and then you figure out how to solve the problem so that you give them confidence that you can solve it. Okay, so that's where we are up until this point. Does that make sense to everybody? Everybody who's here, if that makes sense to you, please put the number 3 in the question box. That's where we are in the chat. If you missed anything, you can check out the 30-day challenge and you can go to the YouTube channel and pick up the first 2 sessions that I did. So if we're making sense basically on where we are, please put the number 3 here. And then maybe somebody will want to be the guinea pig, I think, as Sam said. Okay, thank you, Helen. Appreciate that. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, now what about tonight? And so now what you should have done, and here's what the assignment was, right? What you should have been doing is finding one problem in one niche that you can solve, right? That was what the assignment was for this session. So yesterday you had off. I didn't do a webinar, right? But what I did do is I asked you to find one problem in one niche that you can solve. Right now, even if you have more than one, how many of you right now, you already know of one thing that even if it's not in internet marketing, right? How many of you all know of a problem that you know how to solve that not everybody knows how to solve? Right? If you can say that, I want you to put a Y in the question box. So you know how to solve at least one problem that not everybody knows how to solve. You know how to solve something uniquely, right? So you want to try to find, of all of the problems you know how to solve, you want to pick the one that people are the most desperate to solve, right? So let's say that you know how to solve uniquely, right? So what you want to do today, right, is now which one, and start asking yourself, right? Even if you have to go and start talking to family members, start in. Which are most desperate to solve, right? Which one can they not live unless they solve it? Which one will they pay money to solve in order to make it go away, right? How many of you all know that people will do anything to take pain away faster than they want to accomplish a goal? So sometimes, if you're trying to help somebody to accomplish a goal, that's cool. But if you're trying to help them to rid themselves of some kind of pain, they'll pay for it, right? So try to find the pain that people are willing to pay to make go away. So take all of the problems you know how to solve and take the one and try to find the one that people are most desperate to solve. Then you want to try to pick the one that you just can't easily solve with an internet search. So and again, now let me kind of head this off, because I talked about this the last time, and just because there's a YouTube video on it, just because there's an internet search on it, doesn't mean that you should not create a product. So don't be intimidated by that, right? Don't say, well, you know what, people can go and get that information on YouTube. And I say this all the time. How many of you all have done a search on a subject and then you have so many results you don't know who to trust? How many of you had that experience? Well, if you've had that experience, put the number 4 in the question box. If you've had the experience where you do an internet search and then there are 10 YouTube videos and you have 10,000 results and you don't know which one to trust, right? And so that is the reason why your product is going to be good. If you've had that experience, put the number 4 in the question box. I know I have. I mean, how many of you all have known, I have said this, that on the evening that that my gallbladder felt like it was going to come out of my, my stomach, right? And I went doing an internet search on gallbladder pain because I wanted the pain to go away. And you know what happened? I did an internet search, and there's so much information, you had no idea who to trust, right? And so, yeah, I could have gone to the doctor at that point, but I needed some relief like right then. And so it's hard to find which website you're going to trust, which doctor you're going to trust, which person is talking the truth, which person, which website. And so that's really why you want to have a paid solution available to people who want to find a trusted solution, right? Trusted advisor. So now you want to pick the problem you know how to solve that requires multiple steps for relief. Right? Pick the problem you know how to solve that requires multiple steps for release. It shouldn't just be, well, all you got to do is just touch your toes and it goes away. Right? Pick the one that takes some steps, takes some work for somebody to be able to solve it. Pick the one that maybe not everybody agrees with. We talked about that the last time. So you're trying to find which problem am I going to do a product on. Pick the one that not everybody agrees with. You don't need to have it one that everybody agrees with. You want to have something that has a little bit of controversy to it. And you know what the truth of the matter is? The people that don't agree with your solution, right? They don't agree with your method, they'll buy your product too. So don't always try to agree with everybody. Pick the one that's a little controversial, right? And pick the one that's going to be a little hard for people without your solution, right? Pick the one. So you're trying to figure out, okay, which one am I going to do a product on? Pick the one that's hard. Pick the one that's going to be difficult. And yeah, people are going to have some difficulty doing it, but that's what your product is for. Okay, now, what we're going to talk about tonight is how do you design this product, right? We're going to talk about how you design this product. And I want to kind of go through this. And I'm going to give you one concept that I have talked about before, but I want you to understand it in light of how you're creating your product. Okay, now, how many of you all have asked this question? What do I do? What am I going to do if there's already somebody out there with a product out there that I want to create? So I want to create this product, but I look out there and everybody's got a Kindle book on it already. There's already products on Udemy on it already. There are already products on the Warrior Forum on it already. There are already products on blogs on it already. So why should I? Who's going to listen to me? How many of you all have said that to yourself, right? Excuse me. If you said that to yourself, I want you to put the number 5 in the question box. Because if there's already somebody out there with the product you've created, then that does not mean that you should not create it. It's actually evidence that you're in the right place. It's evidence that you are in the right place and that there is demand for what it is that you want to create it. That's right. Do it better. Do it anyway. Right. Great quotation. Right. So now here's the thing. Most of us, right? And I'm looking at it right now, right? I can point out to you. I can point out to you on my shelf right now. I can point out to you at least 6 products that I've purchased on copywriting, right? That doesn't even count the ones on my hard drive. 6 products on copywriting. So if one person had come to the marketplace and they'd said, well, I'm not going to create a product on copywriting, there are already 5 of them out there. They would have missed an opportunity that I would have bought from them. And so what you've got to do is you've got to be able to say the very same thing. Doesn't really matter if there are already solutions on the topic that you're going to be creating your product on. What matters is that you are going to create it. You're going to create it anyway. And as Kathy says, and as Sam said, do it anyway, do it better. Boy, that sounds like a good slogan, doesn't it? Okay, now, here's something I really want to tell you, right? And you may not believe me, but you have to understand this is true. Some people, right, only want to hear about the solution from you. Right? There's some people who are not going to want to hear about it from me. There's going to be some people that are not going to want to hear about it from the expert on the subject. They are only going to want to hear it from you. One of my favorite products that I've ever purchased, ever purchased, right, was something called Get Altitude by Evan Pagan. Now, Evan Pagan covered a lot of the same information that other people covered. I think what Mike Vilsame covered it, and a bunch of other people covered it back in the day. But you know what? Evan Pagan said it in the way that I liked it. Right? I got it when he said it. Right? And I didn't, you know what? And it didn't matter. I had already had products on all the same stuff on productivity, all the same stuff, had all the same products, but it was a way this dude put it that I got it. And you're going to be the very same way. Some people are going to want to hear it from you, and they're not going to want to hear it from anybody else. You're going to connect with some people that not everybody's going to be able to connect with, and that's what your product is for. And that's why even if somebody's already got it in the marketplace, you can put yours there too. Does that make sense? If that makes sense to you, please put the number 6 in the question box. Right? If you feel like you understand what I mean when I say that some people only want to hear it from you, right? Please put the number 6 in the question box. Now here's the thing, and I think this is what Kathy was saying. When you do come to the marketplace, right? When you do come to the marketplace, you can and should come to the marketplace improving on what's already there. So listen, don't come saying the very same thing. That's first of all, that's not going to make you sales. Second of all, that's not going to do anybody any good. If you're saying the exact same thing that everybody is saying, then that's not of value to everybody, right? So look, let's say that you are going to want to put out a product on Facebook ads. Well, you can't, listen, don't just come to the market telling people how to set up an ad. That's already been covered. Don't just tell people how to do custom audiences. That's already been covered, right? But now if you discover how to make custom audiences work in a different way, and you've improved on this process, then that's what you come to the market with. You make sure they understand all the other stuff. And again, I talked about this in the last call, that's what you use PLR for, right? Use PLR in order to get people up, right, to the point where they get to your solution, but then you cover the part that's new, right? So when you come to the marketplace, whatever your product is, come improving on stuff that's already there. Now, you should come to the market with something unique, right? Because it's very important. It's very important because it will increase the speed at which people buy your product, right? It will increase the speed at which people buy your product or your service or your book or whatever it is. You should come to the market with something unique, and those last 5 words are vital, that people cannot get elsewhere, right? You should come to the market with something unique. And again, those last 5 words that people cannot get elsewhere. So again, this is what we call, right? That is the very best definition of what we call the USP, or unique selling proposition. Now, I know that every business has a unique selling proposition, but guess what? Your product should have a unique selling proposition. Right now, I'm not talking about a slogan. Does everybody get that? A unique selling proposition is not a slogan. It is not a tagline. It should be something unique, something different, something better, right? A unique selling proposition. Now, what do I mean by unique selling proposition? Well, now here's the question you need to ask about your product. What do you have that people are willing to leave what they're doing to come and get, right? So you've got something that they can't get elsewhere, so they got to stop what they're doing and come get yours, right? So it doesn't matter how many other books that are out there. It doesn't matter how much other stuff is out there. They got to leave what they're doing to come get yours, right? And listen, I'm not talking about something grand and wonderful. It can be something little small, and it could be one thing that you've explained in your product that nobody else understood and nobody else explained. You can bring that to your customer. Now, there's a guy, and you may or may not have heard of him. If you haven't heard of him, it's not going to hurt you any. His name is Sean D'Souza. He has a digital products business, right, that called Psychotactics. And so he asked the question, What are you, or what can you be the best in the world at? Okay, what are you the best in the world at? What do you just, I mean, when you start thinking about the products that you're going to be creating, what is it that you can explain or that you can do better than anybody in the world? Or can you get to be the best in the world? The other way to think about USP, what do you have in the marketplace that others do not you have in your product that others do not offer? Right. So again, it doesn't matter if everybody else has already created the product you're creating or the subject. Come to the marketplace with something that other people are not saying, other people are not offering. That is how you can, even if somebody has already covered something, you can come and cover it too. You've just got to come with something that other people are not offering and they can only get from you. Now, what is that? Now, I want to tell you this, and this is really, really important, right? and it's tempting, and I fell into this when I first started creating products. Don't default into lower price, right? That's tempting. And so what you think is, well, you know what? I'll just make my price lower. That doesn't. That's, first of all, it's just not always going to increase your sales because in most cases, we're not necessarily going to be willing to pay for something that we don't have or pay for something we already have just because the price is lower. That's not always going to be true. And just because you put a bunch of stuff in it, that's not always going to be true. You need to put something in it that is unique, right? So it's not a matter of more stuff, and it's not a matter of lower price. Again, don't default there. Now, I'm not saying don't use price, and I'm not saying don't load up your product, but don't rely on that, right? That's not necessarily going to be the selling point. The selling point, the thing you want to go to the market with, is unique selling proposition, and you want to avoid, if you can, right? In some cases, you're not going to be able to do. Some places, you're just going to have to come in. You're going to have to be the cheapest. Now, the only thing about being the cheapest is, guess what? What's the problem with being the cheapest in the marketplace with digital products? Or what's the problem with that? Right? If you know, now I'll just give you the answer to the test. Right? Somebody can make it cheaper. Right? So if you're not saying anything any different, if you're not bringing something different to the marketplace, if you're not bringing something unique, all somebody has to do is copy yours and make it cheaper. So don't default into lower price. Don't default into more stuff, because people can always put more stuff in theirs than you. Right? And Helen is right. Perceived value is lower. Right? Inferior product is what it says. Now, always keep the ratio of value to price at 10 times to 1 time. So what you want to try to do in your product, right? If you're going to be asking for $17, make sure you're giving $170 worth of value, right? However you calculate that. Keep the value at 10 to 1. And you are always going to, listen, if you have a unique selling proposition and your value is 10 to 1, I can't guarantee you, but that product is probably going to sell, right? If the value of ratio to price is 10 to 1, in other words, I'm getting $170 worth of value and I'm paying $17, and you're giving me something I cannot get anyplace else other than you, more than likely, if you do a good job of marketing, I'm buying yours, right? I'm buying it. Right. So again, don't worry so much about, well, other people have it already. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about your price so much, right? No, don't price yourself out of the market. But look, keep the value keep the value of price of 10 to 1, right? Now, and again, here's the thing: I will buy your product if there's something that others on the subject don't offer. So if you're doing an information product and I can only get that piece of information from you, you're the only one teaching it, I want yours, right? I want yours. How many of you all on this call, right, have bought one product and it only taught you one new thing, right? It was worth the money, right? If that's happened to you, put the number 7 in the question box. I know it's happened to me. I know it's happened to you. So in other words, you end up coming, when you get this product, you think, you know what? It's not much different, but then you learn one new thing in it. Right, the man or the woman teaches you one new thing that somebody else could not get across to you. You're just thinking, you know what, this is the greatest product ever made. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you've got the one thing that people want. Now, let's talk a little bit about USP here, right? About your product's USP. Now, when you start talking about USP, again, you have to remember this is not, I'm not talking about a tagline. It has to matter to me, your customer, right? So just because it's unique, if it doesn't matter to me, the person that's going to buy, it's not a USP because it's not a unique selling proposition, right? It can be unique, but just not a selling proposition. It has to be a unique selling proposition. In other words, it has to matter to me to get it, right? It has to matter to me. Now, what do I mean by that? And again, for it sometimes if it's really valuable to me. So you have to find the thing. Again, people are desperate to solve, and that people haven't heard before, or they can't get anyplace else. Now, let's talk about software, right? Let's talk about software. Now, some of you all, how many of you all went after the call, after we got off the call, you went and looked at Code Canyon? How many of you all looked at Code Canyon after we got off the call? Right? The place where you can find software applications. Right? Some of you all have looked at some of those applications, and you should have found them interesting. Now, let's say you're going to bring software to the market, right? Let's say you're to the market. So how are you going to do this and have a USP? Well, you want to make features that make it easy for me to make more money, right? So if you're going to bring a software application to the market, right, it needs to have something that makes it easier for me to make more money. That's the internet marketing niche. If you are in the weight loss niche, it needs to be something that's going to make it easier for me to lose weight, right? How many of you all have a Fitbit? Right, now that's an extreme example. I'm not saying you got to go out and create a Fitbit. How many of you all have a Fitbit, or you know somebody with one, right? Or you've met somebody with one. You know, what is a Fitbit, right? What is it? Okay, it's software and hardware, right? It's software. And what it does is it makes it easier for people to tell what they're doing so they can lose weight. The Fitbit is nothing but an information product, because all it's really doing is giving you information, right? It's a great way to give you information on your physical condition. Right now, can your software save me time? Right? Can your software, are your features cheaper? So when you bring software to the market, it's got to do something uniquely, and it's got to matter to me. Right? It's got to matter to me. If you can make me more money, if you can save me time and it's cheaper to me, it matters. Right? You've hit the right button. And typically software that sells, whether it's on JVZoo, Warrior Plus, or ClickBank, or any place else, it makes it easier for me to profit. It saves me time, or it's cheaper. Is everybody with me on that? So if you understand the concept now of USP, creating software and bringing it to market, please put the number 8 in the question box if you understand that now. Right? If you understand what I'm saying. Right? If you understand what I mean now by a USP, by software that you bring into market having a USP. Yep, that's right, Sam. Okay, now let's talk about, most of you are probably going to be creating an information product or an how-to product. And let me, can I say this to you guys again? I know you're probably tired of me saying it, but I want to say it to you, right? And I really do mean it. Please don't feel like you have to create a make money online product. Okay, please don't feel like that's the only way you're going to be able to sell a product, because people are buying information in other areas right now. Again, people want to make more money, so they're looking at ways to do that. And if you can create something where people are going to learn something new, wonderful. Right? But just don't feel like you have to sell something to people that want to make more money. There are lots of people in the world that want to know stuff other than making money. Right? So I just want to say that about information product and making sure your product has a USP. Okay, it's about 9:36. I'm going to try to wrap this up in the next few minutes. So now, okay, now information product. Okay, now, is there something that that helps me implement faster or something specific to my demographic or niche. Now, what do I mean by that? Right? What do I mean by that? What's a USP? Now, let me kind of dive into this a little bit. I'm gonna fly through this. And I want to give you an example here. Okay, you can get great ideas, right? If you want to know, if you want a kind of a secret to creating some information products, right? If you want a secret to creating information products, and you want to know where to start, look at some of the services being offered, right? Just take a look at services being offered. Now, here's what I mean by that. And if you get this, for some of you who want to create information products in the areas other than internet marketing, this is going to help you. Okay, now I have a magazine here, and I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show it to you right here. Okay, that I get this magazine because I'm a member of the Harrisburg Chamber of Commerce, right? I don't know, the lights kind of in the way. Okay, so it's called Style, right? So this edition, if you can't see, there's a bride on the cover, right? So this is the wedding edition, right? This is the wedding edition, and in here there are tons of ideas for information products. And you might say, now, how is that? How can that be tons of ideas for information products? Let's kind of go back into this here. Okay, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about old services, and let's say that they want to appear in this magazine, right? They're trying to sell their services to people who want to get married, right? So they're trying to sell their services to people that want to get married. So let's think about this. You can do the same thing with info products if you niche it down in this very same way. Now, I'm not saying you have to do weddings, but I want you to think in this way, because this is a way you find unique ways of getting into the niche. This is the way you do this. Okay, now, I think that's my phone. Okay, now, when you start thinking of the same thing for info products, here's what you want to do. Now, how many of y'all have heard of Pilates, right? This way of exercising. I don't know a whole lot about it, but how many of y'all have heard of it? Pilates. How many of y'all have heard of Pilates? If you have, put the number 9 in the question box. Or, just substitute, I don't know, any kind of exercise, right? So there are a lot of books and information, and there's services on Pilates. Right now, that's the old way. Now, or how about this? This is what's popular now: Zumba, or ballroom dancing, right? Ballroom dancing or Zumba, right? Anything, right? Now, I want you to think about that. Now, here's how to think about this. There are services in this magazine for Pilates for weddings, right? So there are probably plenty of information products, just like there are plenty of services on Pilates, aren't there? But now you start to get interesting when you start talking about trying to help people who want to get married. So in other words, how can you help somebody who wants to get married do Zumba so that they can lose weight to get into that dress, or lose weight to get into that tux? Or how can you help somebody do Pilates so that they can lose weight to get into that wedding dress or get into that tux? So in other words, you start thinking about things in terms of the niche, and where you get the ideas is if you see a service that's niched down. Typically, there's information that you can create in order to reach that same person, to tell them how to do it instead of buying a service to do it. Does that make sense? So if now that makes sense to you, I want you to put the number 8 in the question box again. So if you understand what I just said, that you're basically going to take the service and then basically look at it in a different way and create information to the same audience. Well, if that makes sense to you, put the number 8 in the question box. And you can do this in any niche. Right? You can do this with any problem that you want to solve. So in other words, sure. I mean, you know, and I see this, and here's what I mean. You see it all the time, and you see it all the time at this time of year. Let's say, how many of you all know CPAs? Now, just get ready, and if you haven't done it already, now here's an opportunity for some of you, right? Here's an opportunity for some of you, and if you haven't done it already, you need to go do it. Now, go and get your accountant, right? And you say to your accountant that, hey, you know what? I actually hang out with a bunch of people that are involved in business opportunities and making money online, right? And so they really want to they really need to have help figuring out how to pay less taxes, right? So I want to help them to be able to pay less taxes. Would you be willing to create an information product with me so that I can sell it to them, and you and I can split the money, and we'll help them to be able to pay less money on their taxes by you showing me how to help them find the right deductions, right? You know, and guess what? There are going to be a ton of products out on that, but there'd be nothing wrong with you coming out with your own product on that, where you do a joint venture with your accountant. As a matter of fact, tell them that, look, if we make enough money, maybe you do my taxes for free. Well, so just start thinking about ways for you to combine niches and services with it, and then turning that service into an information. Right? So that is the example from services. Now, we're about at 9:43. And so really, as we go into the weekend, now the next thing, I'm going to be doing a hands-on training this weekend. So we're going to get into some hands-on thing. We're done with the theory for this week. So now your job and your homework now is basically to, again, find your product, and then at the very least, start to define what that product is. Make a decision, right? Make a decision on what your product is going to be, and then at minimum, start the outline process. Now, I'm going to show you how to outline starting next week, and we're going to do a hands-on session this weekend on one topic. But now, how many of you all have some place to start? You have an idea of where you can start to create your product. If you have an idea now of where you can create your product, please put the number 7 in the question box. If you have some ideas on where you can create your product. Okay, if you have an idea now on where you can create your product, please put the number 7 in the question box. Because now you should really be able to kind of start thinking. You probably have some choices now, right? And instead of worrying about whether or not this is going to be the perfect product, right? Get it created, right? Get it created. Go to your photographer. Right? If you need to go to the photographer, ask them to help. Go to them and say, you know what are some tips on giving people on how to pick a good wedding photographer, or taking pictures at their wedding. Anything, right? You should now have some ideas on how to think about a good information product. You find the pain, and then you prescribe a solution. Right? Are there any questions? Okay, any questions? If those of you who are still in need of getting the 30-day challenge, is available there in the box there. Right, I'm going to put the link there. Just make sure that you use the code GTP welcome. Right. I'm going to make sure I put in my my YouTube channel address for those of you who want to go back and see the other sessions that I've done on the 30. Use the code GTP welcome there. And then here's the YouTube channel address that I'll put in here. Okay, so are there any questions? We're about at 9:46. Are there any questions at all? Okay, any questions? Okay, everybody, well, you should have a really, really, really good idea on where to start and create your product. Now, if you want to create one on making money online, you can, but just know that you don't have to, right? Solve a problem, find the pain, right? Find the pain people are desperate to solve and solve it. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you very much for being here. And as I said, be on the lookout on Saturday. We'll be doing a hands-on session. So we'll be getting into some stuff with GTP and GMP and really fitting it into what we're doing. And then on Tuesday again, we will get together and we will start talking about the next stage in this process. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night and a pleasant tomorrow. Take care. You're welcome, Cheryl.